You're listening to the Adventuring Party for the third week of November 2024. This week, well, I wanted each of these topics to be a 3-hour mega episode, but I guess we can knock out 3 of them in half an hour if we really must. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and related gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Dave.
And I'm Eoin. What were we here for today, Dave?
What are we here for today? Multiplicity of things. Numerous topics.
Specifically, we're back to see the General. General List 10 this time. A slightly fresher campaigner, supplied by the redoubtable warlord Scar. We got a list of stuff to talk about.
All hail Scar.
All hail the Scar. Oh, man, there's a bunch here. Let's take a look. Where should the starter adventure be?
I'm going to complicate it a bit more and say starter adventures, because I think there should be more than one.
Absolutely. I think every RPG should have a good starter adventure. In fact, should probably have a good starter campaign. I know they're annoying to write. I know they're a ton of work. I know people maybe aren't as jazzed as writing those as they are writing the thing, would prefer to, let the players do what they want, man. Come on, let's snap some fingers. In reality, if you do not give people an outline of what your gameplay loop is meant to look like, how are they meant to figure it out? There was a time you said, just throw some lads on the table and see, away you go, work for war games. It doesn't work anymore. You need to give a framework for how a mission is meant to be structured, how many turns it lasts, how many points you score, how many points should be on the table, is it VPs, is it kills, whatever it is. You need all that there, and the same goes for RPGs. You're not allowed to go, we don't need to give any guidelines. You do need to give guidelines. You need to explain to people what the game looks like when you play it, because then they start to get the expected play result that you intended the game have. And if you don't have an intended play loop for your game, you don't really have an idea for a game.
Yeah.
You're a frustrated novelist, you know?
Games without starter adventures, you're leaving it up to, well, frankly, to other people decide what your game looks like in practice. If you don't have any adventures at all for your game, well, you're definitely relying on other people's vision for how your game plays out. And it probably isn't going to play out anything like how it's envisioned.
Exactly. So my take would be, I have gotten in the past some great experiences from running a starter book adventure, basically opening the RPG book, flipping to the 30 pages of starter adventure there, and running through them. I did, when Dark Heresy first came out, I got the book. I think we had 2 copies of the book. We went back to a mate's house. At 7 p.m. we rolled up characters. We played till 4 in the morning, playing the first adventure. And it was great. It was genuinely a fabulous experience. And having the starter adventure right there facilitated that. Now, I get page space. I get wanting to put stuff you're going to be useful all the time rather than some of the time in there. But I've gotten value from a starter book adventure. Have you ever run a starter book or played a starter book adventure?
Yep, set many times. One example, Travels on a Red Road. It's quite a unique little setting. It's heavily inspired by Siberian and Pacific Northwest native myths, like kind of a flintlock and sorcery setting. And it's got a lot of stuff, like magic's heavily tied to spirits, and there's a lot in it. And the starter adventure, I think, does a great job of kind of demonstrating what it feels like. Like, the players start in this town which is covered in snow and whose main industry is fur, because that's the sort of area it's in. There's definitely a bit of a boomtown feel about it, a little rough around the edges, and then the plot hooks start, and there's stints stints dealing with spirits and monsters in the forests, and all sorts of fun stuff. And it does a great job of conveying this isn't just like a standard trip to the dungeon.
Yeah, 100%. It's super important because it can teach you about, this isn't... Because a starter adventure can fulfill many roles. And one of the things it can do is it can act as a tutorial for playing the system. So you can have, not only am I going to have... I'll have a non-combat test to start out with. I'll have this little quirky subsystem come into play. I'll have combat come into play. And it functions in addition to being a way to show people how the game works. It can work as a structured tutorial for how the rules work. So I think a good starter adventure is incredibly handy. I mean, I think, within your first 10, 15 minutes of starting to play a starter RPG, you should make a test. And you should take your players how they all make a test. And then you're teaching them as you go. You're basically breaking it into little bite-sized chunks of learning that make it a lot easier to figure out, okay, this is how it works. This is how it works. Now I see. That's how we make a test. That's how we do an opposed test. Oh, that's how we do like a complex test. Do some stuff like that so you actually get to learn the setting. Now, where should it be? Okay, if you really don't want to put it in your book because you're only going to use it once, I'm not totally convinced by that. I think it's fine to have it right there because someone could just say, you know what, I just got this new RPG. I've been reading it on the train. Guys, would you like to play? And everyone goes, you know what? Damn straight. Anyone got some A4 pads? Pull them out there. Let's write out the character sheets. I've had some great times like that. Bit of crack, Not every RPG needs to be, let's sit down, have a session 0, talk about... No, sometimes it can be just be, you know what? I know that setting. I'm all in. You got some dice? Excellent. Got some pencils? Let's go. And there's a great spontaneity and energy of doing something like that, particularly sometimes at a con. Or some other time when there's a bunch of us together, and maybe we're like, I don't feel like doing it. What we're going to do next? Hey, let's do this. Oh, yeah, awesome. Let's do that. Great spontaneity for that. And that's not there. You have to go print a PDF or find somewhere to read the PDF on the thing. Nah, have it right there for you to check. All right? Starter box. I love a good starter box. Love a good starter box. It's an opportunity to have little tokens and maybe throw in a few maps, a few other handouts like that. It's a great opportunity to do kind of a deluxe first adventure. So if someone's going to sell me a starter box, they're going to sell it to me at a reasonable price point. Recently, Cubicle 7 have been cracking out starter boxes for all of their game lines.
I have the one for Warhammer Fantasy 4th Ed, and it's quite good, I thought.
It's actually very good. It actually works really well for running a little bit more of a campaign in Ubersreich. Because one of the cool things they did is they did a full list of all the major locations in Ubersreich. And when you go into them, every one of them is 2 plot hooks. So it's even just, you can add some additional colour to the setting by going in there. I know we've talked about plot hooks being the thoughts and prayers of game design. But at that level, that's grand. It's just a little bit of extra colour for people to have a mooch around and go, okay, cool, we can do that, Or we can, that's interesting. Let's go find out a bit more about that particular issue.
I've been hearing good things about their more recent starter kits as well. Imperial Maledictum has gotten or is getting one soon. I kind of lost track.
I believe it is geared up. I know they've just released the first of they're starting to release content for, it's kind of funny. They got out Imperial Maledictive and then kind of like, oh god, we've also got to write more stuff, don't we? They initially had just it out, but now they're actually starting to get out other things, like they're getting the Inquisition book is out in PDF.
Alright.
And the starter set is out in PDF now. So if you buy those, you get the full enchilada there. So yeah, they've got the Inquisition Players Guide out on PDF, and the starter set is out in PDF. And you can also buy the physicals, but the physicals are not out yet, so they will be out sometime.
Yeah, at some point, yeah. But yeah, so is there any good reason not to have a starter adventure?
They're hassle to put together in terms of it's usually an adventure which needs a little bit more careful editing and work to put into it. Or you need a vendor who will print a box for you rather than just a book. So you often need to print, sometimes it's soft cover books stapled, or sometimes it's glued, it depends, but they're generally you need someone who will print soft cover books for you for the interior, and someone who will also print a box for you. Now, the explosion in Kickstarters has led to far more places offering boxes as printing options. Because do you remember, if you went back to the 80s and early 90s, there was a glut of box games, and then it went completely out of the industry for about, probably 20 plus years.
Good lord.
And only now they're coming back, They're great. They're fabulous.
Yeah. No, you can put all sorts of bits and pieces in. Cards for equipment or special abilities, very fancy character sheets, that sort of thing.
Separate maps is the huge thing for me because it's so hard to do a map inside a book that's actually useful.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm hoping more and more we get more back to A3 and A2 maps Because the little A4 ones, it's fine, but I could do it a bigger map. That adds some scope and grandeur to your game if you can unfold an A2 map and go, here's your country, or here's your location. You're like, ooh, all this stuff is going on. So I think it should definitely be there. I'm fine with it being in the rulebook. I'm really happy with it in the starter book. If you want it to be a PDF instead, that's fine. I would prefer in the book, but I understand people going, oh, look, better to have it separate, not waste any space. And some people get very exercised about it. Okay, fine. But I'd like, if you can give me a starter box instead, happy as Larry. Should the starter box have a simplified rule set?
Oh, I could see arguments either way.
Yeah.
Because, simplified rule set gets people into the game quicker, but you could end up having people get used to a simple set when the more comprehensive set is actually a better experience. I could see it going either way.
Yeah, 100%. I personally wouldn't teach someone the wrong rules as a joke. I don't like, these aren't really the rules. Don't worry, I'll teach you the proper rules later. I would prefer better teaching and learning tools be implemented in the adventure. Be it a better character sheet for learning the game, or be it something else. But don't go, oh, this is how it works in the starter. When you play the real game, I'm like, oh, dudes, no.
What I'd be more inclined to do is not so much a simplified version as a subset of the rules.
Yeah, that's fine. Leave out some stuff, that's grand. Like, you don't need the magic rules maybe if no one in the party is a wizard. But I don't like going, this isn't how the rules work. This is a different way to handle it, which is a lot simpler. Okay, if you think that was better, you should have done that in the first place. That should be the core rules. Or if it's not better, if it's inferior, why are you teaching people wrong? People learn poorly, and they learn often under protest. Don't make them learn something, then unlearn it, then learn it again, because half the time they're going to remember it the way the first time you taught it. Oh no, just never. Don't teach people things wrong and then say, don't worry, I'll teach them right later on.
Yeah, that sounds like making work for everyone, and yeah.
Bad idea. I'm a teacher, bad idea. I teach people multiple ways of doing things, that's fine. But I will not teach someone the wrong way of doing stuff and go, I'll teach you the right way in the future.
Yep, fair. I think that's Starter Adventures covered decently.
I think so. Lore and canon redux. But what about my great idea? How to resolve when players and GMs have their own interpretation of a species, location, or concept in a game that conflicts with the original work but means a lot to them.
Oh, but see also the 5e paradigm of Superlight lore that can be jettisoned because funny. There's a lot there.
Okay, my thing often is that if you want to be wacky inside the lines. You can go and do something like, oh, but I want to play against type, or I want to be this, or I want to be that, and that's all fine. But if you're going to do something that's like, oh, I'm an orc, but I'm also a member of the Empire in Warhammer Fantasy, and if anyone disagrees with me, I just threaten them, and they go, oh, I better not talk with that orc, He's a priest of Sigmar, because he says it, like, lads.
Internal consistency.
It starts to cut into other people. Other people will notice that and probably get annoyed that you're deliberately tweaking your nose at the canon. And the canon is there as kind of this is usually actual session 0 stuff, where you want to go, I want to be a good Skaven, or I want to be 3 Skaven in a trench coat. And no one's going to ever notice that I'm 3 Skaven in a trench coat. And I'll make a lot of jokes about that being funny. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, the other players may not be super into this. And you start to compromise the theme of the game. And when you're kind of thumbing your nose at the conventions of the setting, it will definitely annoy some people who are lore purists. And it'll annoy anybody who goes, I thought that was how it works. And the GMs go, yeah, it is, but he's different. Or, it normally is, but we're going to change that. And you're kind of like, hang on, what else has changed? And there's an automatic reactionary thing that will happen to people. Like, hang on, what are you? And that's a very normal human reaction when the underpinning assumptions or rules are changed. We go, hang on a second. This has changed? Well, when did we agree that? Or when did we decide that? And that's a very normal reaction that people have to a assumption being altered, especially on somebody's kind of whim. It's a session 0 thing, I think.
Yeah, no, that's legit. Like, honestly, if you're going to have a wacky game, have a wacky game. Like straight up say, look, rules are out the windows, or the rules are very loose with this game. Do not expect serious faction play or whatever. Like,
Now, if you want to play a comedy game, lads, the Monty Python one that came out this year is meant to be really good. I haven't read it all yet, but I've heard a bunch of reviews that have said it's excellent. And there is a Discworld RPG the Modifius are currently kickstarting. If one would like a comedy RPG, I would suggest one go pick up a comedy RPG. They're often dedicated to that purpose, and let me tell you, comedy is the hardest thing to do in an RPG. You can be unintentionally funny in an RPG quite easily. You can be sort of funny on the spur of the moment. When you set out to be funny, my God, it's hard. Like, genuinely, I think there are very few comedy RPGs, and the reason is it's really difficult.
Yeah, but making comedy is no joke, as it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more difficult, and being a fine kind of comedic actor is much harder than being a dramatic actor.
Mm.
Because there's a bunch of craft and stuff you can do in dramatic acting, which tricks people into thinking you're a great actor. Whereas being funny is being funny has a much more kind of stringent and obvious test, which is can you get people to laugh? There's a bunch of comedians everyone assures me are great, and I said, yeah, I've never laughed at them though.
Yeah, it's a bit personal. But just looping back to the topic more tightly, player and GM having a clash over interpretation. I mean, it could be that the original thing just wasn't defined very well.
Yeah.
As in, it could be a lightly touched part of the setting, so to speak. As in,
Yep.
I always imagined the rock people to be just, like they're just, they're just very rough skin. No, I always thought they were actually rock. Like,
Yeah. Did I ever tell you I've got a couple of 40k hobby horses for 40k lore? And one of them would be if you ever played a game with me and it came up, one of the things as a GM, I wouldn't do this as a player, but I do it as a GM. I'd be like, oh, the Catan, yeah, they were the gods of law. And you're like, what? They were gods of law. They were the gods of the law of the physical world. And you'd be like, oh, does it ever say that? I said, yeah, it says it indirectly. And if you got into the setting, I'd be like, yeah, it's not going to come up most of the time. But if the players ever started to encounter that, they'd figure it out pretty quickly. These guys are the gods of law. And it's something that's fairly well supported by the lore. It's just never explicitly stated, which is an interesting one to get into.
oh,
So you might be like, okay, how are they the gods of law? I said, well, the gods of law, because if you look into them, they all had a function and they used to reinforce an existing physical law or property in the setting, like gravity or anything else exists because there's a Catan associated with it or a Catan regulates it. And the warp used to be quiet and placid and there was nothing in it. And if you look into it, it's stated that the Necrons killed one of the Catan permanently, destroyed them, and as a result of destroying them, permanently altered the physical laws of the universe. And if you look at the difference between our reality and 40k, the major difference is the warp is not placid.
oh, definitely not.
And the whole thing is, when you die in 40k, your soul is meant to go back to the warp. And the deaths of people with their emotions and memories are what stirred up the warp. That didn't used to happen. That was because the Catan the Necrons killed was the Flayer. And what do Flayers do?
Oh, they remove. To use a paraphrase.
Separate and remove things. So Catans eat souls, but you can't eat a soul in 40k. If you eat a soul, it just goes back to the warp, back into the Sea of Souls. So what are you eating? You're probably eating the memories. You're probably eating the thoughts and emotions. So what used to happen was the Flayer's job was to separate people from their thoughts and emotions and their soul and send the soul back to the warp. Because that's what happened to the Necrons. Their thoughts and memories and emotions got separated from their souls. And they don't have souls anymore. So the souls went back into the warp.
What's that about walking through a gate or a yoke to strip him? Like,
Exactly. So what happened when they killed the Flayer was the ability to strip out emotions and memories before it went to the warp goes. And that leads to the creation of the warp, which leads to the creation of the chaos gods. So killing the gods of order results in the creations of the gods of chaos. That's my personal 40k lore. It's reasonably well supported by existing stuff, just not specified that closely.
I could see it. I wouldn't necessarily say that is the case, but I could see it. I could see it working.
It's supported enough that I could make the argument. You go, well, that kind of makes sense. And that's an example of a bit of lore that as GM, you're allowed to put in. And people will be able to go, I'm not sure they've ever say that. So they don't have to explicitly say that, but I've coloured enough within the lines that it's arguable, but at the same time, Maybe it's not something that's explicit. It's not like I'm talking about the caliber size of bolter shells here, which has its own little bits of variance depending on where you go looking. But, like, for example, are Astarte shells bigger than human bolter shells?
Oh, I'm inclined to say yes, but I spent a lot of time playing Fantasy Flight 40k RPGs.
Exactly, where they are explicitly different sizes. Whereas if you asked about the 40k RE, they're like, what? No, they're the same. Are they? Are they? So that's an example of just looking kind of doing it a bit differently. And as a GM, I can do that. I would probably tell players if that was going to be a core bit of the setting. But if I'm sprinkling in some flavor about something that really isn't covered, you're kind of safer. Whereas if you're going and changing something that's long understood, like, oh, Kender aren't annoying at all, you're like, hold on a sec, hold on, citation requested. Could I get a fact check on that one?
Or what happened to make them not annoying? Because that was because you could do something like that as well. Some earth-shattering change that, okay, all of the Kender have been mind wiped and by a god who's annoyed with their nonsense.
Yep.
Okay, that seems excessive, but fair enough.
But not exactly the thing. I have a take on Sanguinius as well, which would annoy some people. That's probably for another day.
Could do a bunch on that.
Absolutely.
So if you as a player have a GM who is changing something significant, I mean, well, cue argument.
Session 0, I think, most of the time. Or you do have to give your extended GM a little bit more slack than the extended player. Because they may be doing something that seems off, but then very quickly you may realize, oh, wait. Like, for example, let's say I'm running Battletech and I'm running 3048. And suddenly clan mechs start attacking a planet. But they're not saying they're the clans. You're like, hang on a second, that's a clan mech. You shouldn't have clan mech. There's no clan mechs here. But then you're looking at they're all 2C mechs. They're all clan refits of existing ones. And then you realise, hang on a second, this isn't a clan invasion. This is somebody who's found a Brian cache and has looted it for clan mechs and is now raiding periphery worlds with it. So you have to extend the GM a little bit more. There's no such thing as ghosts in this setting. My setting of investigation games set in, rural America. There's no such thing as ghosts. And then you realize, oh my god, it's Old Man Withers. You have to give your GM a tiny amount of slack before you immediately fly off the cannon handle. So just see where they're going.
Oh, there was a great idea in one of the my ancient gaming mags about you roll up characters for a game called Gangsters, and you're investigating. And geez, these gangsters are very bloody and a bit twisted. And eventually you find, it's actually a Cthulhu worshipping cult. So the reveal becomes that much more of a hit.
Like, Cthulhu would be so much more effective if it could be camouflaged in other settings than revealed halfway through. Because when you start playing Call of Cthulhu, I once tried to pitch Mountains of Madness in Call of Cthulhu. Both of the prospective players said, no, not going to Antarctica, not doing it, not in Cthulhu. They're all like, no way. We are not doing this. This is a stupid plan. And then you're just like, yep. Because I often thought Masks of Nyarlathotep could be run in Dark Heresy really well. And just you reskin the planets as the countries as planets. And you basically run like that. Complete Masks of Siege.
Yeah, it even fits thematically.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we do one more?
One more.
Dealer's choice, Dave. What do you like to look up there?
What do I like to look of?
You would be shocked how many topics Scar has prepared for us.
Glorious lists. Site-based adventures versus plot-based adventures. What's the relationship between what's happening and where everything's laid out? Honestly, I think I'm going to be leaning a little bit towards site-based adventures because even in so-called plot-based adventures, they need to happen somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think there is certainly a spectrum of, are you, say, sticky around a particular location, or are you just going where the plot takes you?
Yeah. I mean, is this kind of the sandbox versus plot one?
Well, maybe.
I mean, I know that, sometimes we have like, this is The sandbox is better because we have we can go anywhere, do anything we like. And if you've got a well-detailed site, it's actually grand running a kind of site-based thing. If you have the town of Ubersreich, as you're talking from the Wolfram starter set, where there's a plot hook two plot hooks in every location on it, or you've got somewhere like Ankh-Morpork where you can look up a bunch of stuff where people want to go somewhere, it's not too bad. It's actually pretty manageable. If, on the other hand, you have a village you've invented because the players say, can we stop at this new village? You go, yeah, you stop at the village of Randomsburg.
What you call it?
Yeah, that'll do. And then all of a sudden, the players decide they want to hang out in Randomsburg and figure out how everything works. You're like, oh god, I have no notes, I have nothing. It becomes really hard to run a site-based adventure. Really difficult. I occasionally see people talking about playing an RPG, and I saw one on a Twitter thread of someone talking about playing Space Master, which was,
I'm familiar with that one, yeah.
It's, kind of Roll Master, but in space.
Oh, okay.
In space. And the players were creating their characters, and they all decided they were all going to be in a band. And they rolled up, gave all their character skills. And the GM's like, guys, this is nothing like the adventure I've written. And could you have some skills for fighting people and shooting people with lasers? And the players, fine, we'll go back and put some of those skills on. And they're on a spaceship for their tour bus. The tour bus partly explodes and crashes on this planet to do the adventure. And the players spend all their time trying to put on a concert. And the GM is freaking out. And everyone's like, oh yeah, which is supposed to be fun. The GM should go with that. And I said, okay, I'm going to predict a counterpoint here. Right? This is session 0 problem. The GM has not said, this is not about being in a band. I've written an adventure with Gundams and robots for you guys to fight. And you go, no, the GM should be flexible. I get the GM should have some flexibility. However, if you've already written the adventure, if you've written for hours, writing the scenario, grappling with the system to force Gundams into it, purchasing rulebooks, painting minis, getting terrain ready, and then the players go, could you just wing it instead? You are like the wife who spends hours making dinner and the family come home and say they all want to order in pizza.
Oof.
You're like, no, we're not doing that. Like, every GM comes off unreasonable in this story. When every GM's point of view is like, no, we're not doing that. But we want to be in a band now and put on a concert. No, you're fighting the Gundams. Because I have spent hours getting the Gundams ready and writing the rules for Gundams. And I bought 3 HG Gundam kits and assembled them. And I panel outlined them. And I did some edge highlighting. You're fighting the bloody Gundams. And I have a certain amount of sympathy for that. As someone who's occasionally prepared great swaths of things for classes or other things. And then been, no, you're doing this. Sorry, we're doing this one. I've put a lot of effort into this. I want to see if it works or not. So I understand. Now, at the same time, you can be too rigid. You always can be too rigid. But, session 0, lads, right? If you want to do a site-based adventure, let the GM prepare some stuff for it. Because some GMs are fine winging it. But they know that the quality of their stuff they're doing will wing isn't the same consistency. What's this guy's name? You son of a... Heinrich Bad Ankle. Oh, has he got a bad leg? Yes, he does. You're trying to wing it, your quality will drop a little bit. You'll often be looking around in front of you trying to name your guy like Kobayashi. His name is Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. Oh, that's a bit weird. Look, I'm looking at things in front of me. He's called Leap Kaard. So I think a little bit of grace extended there. If you know everything that's there already, if it's all been plotted out for you, running a site-based adventure or like a location-based adventure, it's actually fine. It's grand. You need to be able to swing with, you need to be a little bit dexterous, but it's grand. When you don't have anything ready, it's terrifying. You're, I don't have any pictures ready for this, guys. I've no art ready for this. I've no minis ready for this. Please stop trying to do this. I have nothing ready for it.
It can be a good move to flat out, to level with the players and say, look, I don't have anything prepared for this. You've got off on a tangent. I'll need some time to work on this, or do it next week.
It's difficult though. It is admitting failure and weakness, which is always a dodgy thing to admit as a GM.
Yeah, it's not great, but the alternatives could be worse. depending on how badly a improvisation gets, because as you've alluded to, they can get pretty silly.
Absolutely. Because it's hard. It's actually hard to get in and try to do it. Any thoughts yourself on the site-based adventures?
I suppose the site needs to be interesting enough to have players wanting to stick around and not just go, Dullsville is boring and we are going to find something to do. But starting a band is starting pretty good right about now. Yeah, the site setting or the sandbox or whatever needs to actually have enough in there and enough going on that players are more busy thinking about, right, how are we going to handle this, that, and the other? What are we going to loot next? As opposed to getting bored and, bored players are dangerous.
Absolutely. You can't let them get too bored or they'll start to cause trouble. Okay. If you have anything you'd like added to a general list, you can come bother us on social media. Or go give Scar a poke. You can come onto our Discord and shout at us. You can follow us on YouTube and make a comment there. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 1.3 license.